The defendant's actions, as we've heard today from the victims, affected so many people beyond Isaac and the other stabbing victims and Madison Cohen. It affected his friends, his family, classmates, teachers, the friends and family of the other victims, innocent bystanders around the river, the sense of safety in our community, and what's otherwise known as a recreational area. We heard from the victims earlier the lifetime physical damage as a result of this for AJ and Riley. There's obviously a lifetime emotional damage for all of the victims and family. Dante and Tony were lucky no vitals were injured. Madison Cohen, for the battery, her injuries were pretty minor. It was pain, essentially. But she talked to the PSI writer about the emotional trauma from this event, as we've heard from other victims this morning. When we first met with Madison, she told us similar things that she told the PSI writer, that about how when she got to shore, Isaac, who she didn't know, was there getting CPR, and Isaac's mom showed up. And Isaac's mom was holding his feet and saying he's going to be okay, and sobbing. And Madison, sobbing, telling us this, said she decided she's never going to have kids because she can't stand the thought of suffering trauma like she witnessed with Isaac's mom on the shore. Proper consideration for sentencing, as outlined in Gallion, is the character of the deceased in a homicide. We've heard about Isaac from his family. His mother also provided us with some letters from other friends who aren't victims, describing what kind of person Isaac was. His friend Alex Vang, who was with him on the river, described him as always wanting to make sure everyone was happy, always cracking jokes, generous, talked about how they'd spend times talking about their dreams and goals after high school. He said Isaac was one of the people who inspired him for his future because of how driven and motivated and energetic Isaac was. He talks about anger, grief, and guilt following this incident. Landon Wire, who was with Isaac, talks about how this has affected him, loss of one of his best friends, about how he'll be scarred and traumatized by seeing the blood, the guts, and losing his friend, about how he'll never get the chance to grow because of the actions of Nicolae Miu. Juan, who filmed the video, hopes that justice will be served and his conviction is a step forward, but talks about how he'll never replace being able to see Isaac again, having one more hug, telling him he loves him. Clearly has no idea that self-defense is meant to stop a threat, not to terminate people and leave them belly up. I'm sure defense is going to spend a lot of time talking about his lack of criminal history. It's not unusual we see horrific crimes committed by somebody with no criminal history. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of discussion about him being a peaceful person. A peaceful person doesn't rush up on a group of teenagers because they insulted you. Doesn't refuse to walk away. A peaceful person doesn't take out a knife when they could have just walked away. Doesn't start a fight and stab 5 people. I think there's more. A big question in this, I think defense is going to argue, is he's not a danger to the public. One, I think the crimes speak for themselves. Clearly he's a danger. No reasonable person in his situation would have acted like he did. This would have ended before it was even anything. Talking about leaving people belly up and terminating them is not the words of a peaceful person. His lack of remorse is certainly an indication of his lack of respect for human life. His dehumanizing the boys, including Isaac, with this terminology he uses to describe them. Another thing that's perhaps a clue that maybe this shouldn't be that surprising is when law enforcement went to his residence after he was arrested, they got consent from his wife to search his Jeep. In that Jeep, they found a machete concealed. Can we have the screen? That was concealed between the center console and the passenger seat. When law enforcement asked his wife about it, she described that he has that for protection for possible road rage incidents. She then later said, well, actually, maybe it's from camping. I think nobody hauls camping material, camping equipment, concealed where it's in easy reach of the driver. It's absolutely bizarre that somebody would decide, one, that they're so concerned about road rage that they have to carry a weapon. I completely understand people conceal carrying, but to do it specifically because of road rage is strange. But absolutely bizarre is choosing to carry a machete. That makes no sense.
So again, we're here to talk about Mr. Miu, and we're here to talk about Mr. Miu's actions or reactions, and you're here to judge those, and you're not here to judge or blame others. I get that, and I appreciate that. But his actions, his reactions, did not occur in a vacuum. It did not occur in a vacuum. The second question, moving on from his character to some degree, is and again, I sent Your Honor a letter. There was numerous quotes from all of his family and friend. He's got numerous family and friend that are here. And some of them even asked me, could we say something on behalf of Nick? And I appreciate why somebody would want to do that. My hope is that Your Honor, through the PSI, through the letters that I submitted, through the letters that other people wrote and that I submitted, Your Honor gets a picture of who Mr. Miu is. And it's, while calling witnesses might help this process today, I don't think it's going to help Your Honor. And at the end of the day, I think my audience is the court. So, what's the next question? The next question is Mr. Miu in need of correctional treatment which can most effectively be provided in confinement? And I think the answer to that clearly is no. There is nothing in the PSI, there's nothing in his character, there is nothing in any of the information that's been submitted to the court that he has any treatment needs. There's been this potential about alcohol. I understand that, right? And one of the things that Mr. Miu wanted me to point out regarding the correction from the PSI regarding substance abuse history, in particular pages 22 through 34. It's probably just easier for me to quote his words. It's not as much a correction as just maybe some things were left out. And his words to me were, I rarely drank any alcohol in college, and when I did, it was beer only, never hard liquor. Rarely drank more than 1 to 2 beers, and rarely until I would get a buzz. I avoided getting a buzz. I did not like beer or any type of alcohol in the beginning at 23 years old. I drank socially only. So that's, again, it's not, I don't think, nobody said that he was intoxicated on that river. The PSI acknowledges that's not what the evidence was. Was there alcohol involved? Yes. The witnesses that testified, the witnesses that submitted to him, he's not in need of treatment for any substance abuse. There's no other need that he could only get in prison, right? And even if there was, whatever, again, I don't think that there's an alcohol problem, but I think it's undisputed that treatment for alcohol can best be provided in the community. So he doesn't have needs. He's educated, he's employed, he has no record, no past behavior. the treatment, right? I think at some point, if we're talking about sentencing, sentencing is about modifying our attempts, the court system, the court, attempts at modifying another human being's behavior, right? Either through moral education or giving them other tools, other skills so that they are reduced risk. In this situation, if you're talking about the morality, we have to again consider the circumstances of this event. We have to, right? I understand Mr. Anderson does not agree with my analysis of the verdict. There's probably never going to be an answer as to whether or not, to what degree self-defense was considered by the jury, or whether there's been any factual finding that he, in fact, had an actual belief that he was acting in fear. I think the evidence supported that. My conclusion, as I put in the writing, was that the jury determined that his beliefs were unreasonable, and that's why self-defense didn't apply. Your Honor is going to be able to do that in your own context, so I'm not trying to relitigate, but I think that that's important here, because it's our position that he had a sincerely held belief. Mistaken, wrong, unreasonable, but the jury found it to be reckless. This is not an intentional act that needs to be modified. The state, even though they didn't say that, their implication is what he did was something that's intentional. They talk about his smirking. They talk about his doing other things as if this is something that he intended. The jury denied that. They denied that theory. They rejected that theory. You okay? Yeah. Read it in court.
All right. Dear parents, family, and friends of Isaac, I would like to start by letting you know how deeply sorrowed I am, and I will always be, for the real fact that Isaac is not with you anymore, and that I was directly involved in his very tragic and unimaginable death at such an early age. I never meant for this tragedy to occur. My soul is broken. My heart is very heavy. And I will never be the same carrying such a heavy burden and sorrow. I pray to God for forgiveness, compassion, and love for everyone affected directly and indirectly by the outcome of this tragic event. I'm hoping that you appreciate how much I'm sorry for the outcome of those events. I'm very sorry.
So we'll have that marked as Exhibit 3, Judge.
That'll be received into the record.
That's all then from the defense, Judge.
There is more to Mr. Miu than his worst acts. I can tell Mr. Miu has taken this case very seriously. He has been appropriate and respectful in his demeanor in court. I sense that he carries a heavy burden, too. I imagine he is disheartened at the prospect of prison and the uncertainty of his future. But I also sense that Mr. Miu feels genuine sadness and remorse for what happened to his victims. So at this time, I will impose the following sentence on Mr. Miu. For count 1, I will impose a term of initial confinement of 20 years, followed by 6 years of extended supervision. For count 2, involving Anthony Carlson, 5 years initial confinement, followed by 5 years of extended supervision. Count 3, involving Dante Carlson, 5 years of initial confinement, followed by 5 years of extended supervision. Count 4, Alexander Martin, 6 years of initial confinement followed by 5 years of extended supervision. Count 5, Riley Madison, 5 years initial confinement followed by 5 years of extended supervision. Count 6, Madison Cohen, 270 days of jail. Mr. Miu is not eligible for challenge incarceration program or the earned release program due to his age and the nature of these offenses. The sentences on all 6 counts will run concurrent. I am imposing a concurrent sentence because Mr. Miu's conduct toward each of his victims was part of a single continuous act over a short period of time. The periods of confinement take into consideration Mr. Miu's entire behavior, not just the behavior directed at any one particular individual. The conditions of extended supervision will include the following: maintain absolute sobriety, no possession of drugs or alcohol. You shall not enter any establishment where the primary purpose is the sale of alcohol. This will include places like bars, taverns, liquor stores, beer tents, and the like. You must complete an AODA assessment. You must comply with all recommendations of the Compass Assessment and the Department of Corrections. He must pay court costs and DNA surcharge on each count. He must submit a DNA sample. He may not have any contact with Isaac Schumann's family, including Elena and Donnie Hernandez and Scott Schumann. He may not have contact with Alexander Martin, Riley Madison, Anthony Carlson, Dante Carlson, or Madison Cohen. He is responsible for restitution. The state must submit its restitution demand within 30 days. The defense may have 30 days thereafter to object. If there is an objection, the matter will be scheduled for a restitution hearing. Because Mr. Miu is convicted of serious felonies, he may not possess firearms. He may not possess body armor. He may not vote or hold public office until his civil rights are restored. If he were to do any of those things contrary to law, he would subject himself to additional criminal penalties. If he violates the no contact orders, he may also subject himself to additional criminal penalties. Does the state agree on the credit calculation, 732 days?
Yes.
All right, 732 days credit. Mr. Miu is remanded to the custody of the sheriff for delivery to the Dodge Reception Center. Is there anything else for today, Mr. Anderson?
No.
Mr. Nelson?
No, Judge.
All right. Thank you all. We stand adjourned.